Here we go. Hello, everyone. Patricia Worby, Alchemy Therapies here. Delighted today to welcome my wonderful friend and colleague, Kuljit Sehmi, who, when asked what she calls herself, what sort of therapy she does, said to me she doesn't really use labels. She actually just says to people, I help people free themselves from pain and trauma. And I think that's so wonderful to not get hung up on the labels of what we do or what tools we use, but how we approach the overall thing when we're working with people. You know, we are more than our tools. I think you'd agree, Kuljit. We are about empathy, we're about connection, we're about sort of giving people, empowering them, really. So I wanted for a long time to interview you, and it just occurred to me now's the perfect time. Now we're in a new year. I would love to ask you, what first of all got you into doing this work? Because it's an interesting field and we've all got different stories, but if you just sort of tell me how you got to be where you are.
Okay, so well, I was an optometrist for 20 years, so employed, working for small independent opticians, testing eyes in a small windowless room, and I loved it for years. But then I started struggling with pain, strange symptoms, strange sensations going around my body. Whether it was burning pain or shooting pain or pins and needles that got painful, just and bouts of tiredness, which, you know, I wasn't used to. I was fit, healthy, worked, took care of my young family, and yeah, my symptoms just got worse and worse. I developed fibromyalgia, arthritis, neuromas, and that's when my whole world changed, really. I'd been used to knowing what to do, how to do it, being in control and in charge. And all of a sudden, having all these symptoms, not knowing what to do, not knowing what was causing them, and going through the medical profession to look for answers. That was a really big, long journey for me. I was very lucky, actually, because so many people that I see tell me, you know, they didn't get a diagnosis for 10 years. But for me, it was quite quick, within a year. So of me actually going there and looking for answers. However, the result was they said there's nothing really they can do but to give me medication. And the symptoms I had by that point was constant pain everywhere, quite severe, would stop me in my tracks, blurred vision, muscle tremors, slurred speech. Honestly, the fatigue was exhaustion. It was like wearing a lead suit. I couldn't walk when the neuromas developed, so I was kind of stuck. And I was told I could take medication, which I did try because I was really desperate. And I went on a little bit of a journey to find out, to try different things through specialists. And to be honest, nothing really worked. In fact, I felt even worse on the medication. So I did stop it quite quickly.
Yeah, that happens with a lot of us, doesn't it? I think we go down the route we've always been taught, particularly if, like you, I was coming from a traditional science point of view, you know, doubted that there were any other options other than medication. And obviously you try it, it's your first port of call, and it doesn't always work. In fact, to be fair, in these kind of long-term chronic conditions, it hardly ever does. It certainly doesn't attack the source problem, it just deals with the symptoms. So we end up often, if we're poor detoxers, we end up even sicker, which I think you probably is what happened to you. It's what happened to me.
Yeah.
So step me forward then. You're in terrible pain. You've got all these really disturbing symptoms, which must have been very frightening. I can only imagine. I know when I had fatigue, it was bad enough, but to have sort of neurological symptoms as well. How then did you move into this field that you're now doing? I mean, was it just you tried therapies yourself?
So I was actually introduced to phototherapy patches through my sister, who had a colleague whose mum had polymyalgia. So it was a bit of a long a drawn out thing. And, you know, she basically found someone who told her what to do with these pain releasing patches, pain relieving, to help me, because I was really struggling. I mean, I couldn't even sit down or stand or lie down without pain, and it was really severe. So that actually sparked something in me, because she put them on me and she obviously didn't quite get it right, but I felt a sharp pain building. It was actually building and working up my body as if someone was stabbing me with a knife, and it was just increasing and increasing in intensity. And tears were coming down my face, and I just thought, and I just screamed at her when I reached my limit. I was like, take them off. And all she'd done was put 2 patches on my body. And it wasn't the result that I wanted, but it showed me something, that these things were doing something. So I was a bit disheartened, to put it mildly, and I put those away. It was only when I came to my really lowest point that I just thought about them again. They popped up in my mind, and I had a number for someone who could help me with them. And I just rang up and said, help me. And he did. To his credit, he gave me his time. He would get on Skype every day and say, well, put them here, try them here, use them in this way. And he gave me 4 different sets of patches. Some for sleep, because I hadn't slept in years with the pain and symptoms. Some for energy, because of the extreme fatigue. Some for stress relief, because with all those symptoms and not being able to work and having the family to take care of and nobody being able to help me, I was in a real stress loop, because it felt like my world was grey.
Yeah.
Any comment from my husband or my children, I just took it really badly, really negatively, and that wasn't me. So I just didn't know what was going on. And with all those patches, I couldn't remember anything, because I'd lost my memory. Like with the sleep, it's one of the first things that goes. You can't really concentrate. So I had to keep a diary for the first time in my life of where I was putting these patches. Unfortunately, they all looked pretty similar. So there was me drawing matchstick men, and, you know, this is where I'm putting them. But something remarkable for me, with my scientific background, something truly remarkable happened. I was coping much better. I was feeling better. I was able to do more. Now, they didn't cure the symptoms, because when I took them off, because I tried and thought, oh, I'm better. I took them off and the pain was excruciating, and I put them straight back on. So they helped me cope. They helped me sleep. They helped me just be able to get through my day. Put it that way. I wasn't back to normal. I wasn't my lively, energetic self. But really, with the pain I had, it was a lot less, and I could cope with that. I could deal with that. And I did feel calmer. I felt different. So that really got me curious. Like, how can these things, these little plasters, actually affect me that much? And then I started to realize, you know, I didn't know everything. Nobody did. The medical profession don't know everything. And there are other things that we can learn about. So I kind of dove in to find out what was happening to me, really. And it was the opposite to what I used to do. I used to look at research, look at the evidence, and then decide whether I would do it or not. And I've completely changed that through the experiences I've had. Now I like to experience it and then see if it's powerful enough or it affects me enough to me want to look into it deeper. So I've done that with everything that I've learned from that point on. And the science was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating. It really works with our body's energy. We're bioelectrical beings. We're not a machine. we don't work that way. We don't just wear out. Our hair grows, and we know this because our hair, our nails grow, everything changes, but it degenerates and regenerates. So I started to learn about all this stuff, and I wanted to know the science of how these patches were affecting me when not a single chemical was flowing into my body. So it was actually reflecting this energy, this bioelectric energy, modulating the signal and sending it back to my body, my organs, my cells. And it worked for me.
It's really interesting what you're saying, as it's actually the subject of the book I'm writing at the moment, the bioelectric field. How this has been completely ignored in the medical profession. We've had the idea that biochemistry is everything, that we need to intervene in certain pathways by the addition of certain chemicals, and that in itself is going to cure a condition or treat something. But it totally ignores the biophysics, the fact that, as you say, we are energetic, and I don't just mean in that ethereal kind of slightly woo-woo way. We are literally humming, vibrating, emitting. We know from brain waves and heart waves, we can measure these things. But also our skin is bioelectric. The fascia underneath is bioelectric. When you touch it, the piezoelectric effect creates a signal. And it's like, we don't talk about this. We don't talk about the fact that the brain emits light. We can measure that now. It's just because it's not visible to the naked eye, we assume that doesn't happen, but we can measure it, we can see it. And this idea that DNA, for instance, is vibrating all the time, and it's the vibrations that actually, the coherence of those vibrations, where the waves are in synchrony, is what contains the information. And that's what you're talking about. So you were changing the information input into your body, which had become degraded over time.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you use these patches with your clients exclusively, or sometimes? How do you then work with?
So we discuss options. Some people are open to them and want to try them. Some people aren't. So really, we go with what's needed. If someone is really struggling with their pain and symptoms, then it's something I suggest, simply because their signals are chaotic. It's like your body's short-circuiting. I remember way back when I was struggling, I said to somebody, it feels like all the switches in my body have gone wrong. I didn't know how close I was to the truth there, because that's what it felt like nothing's working in the way it should. And it's all to do with these signals. So, we decide on an individual basis. And it doesn't really matter if they're open to the effects. However, it's the willingness and the commitment of the person that I'm working with that I really gauge, because you're doing something different than you've not done before, that's not familiar, and that willingness, that curiosity to see, well, how do they affect me, is really important. I think it's one of the major factors that really impact recovery from these chronic conditions, chronic pain and chronic symptoms. Because if there's a willingness and an openness, maybe a little bit of curiosity, it goes a very long way to helping.
I'd agree. I mean, they do say that where there's a will, there's a way, I guess. But I think really openness is what you're describing, because I know I wasn't open. I wasn't open at all to any of this. And we should say, folks, that it may appear that we're coming across as, new age gurus. And actually, the truth is we're both from a very traditional science background, and I imagine both had similar views. I know I had a friend who offered me shiatsu. Well, he was training about 20 years ago, and I refused free shiatsu, saying, I don't believe in that stuff. That's what I said. And he was like, oh, all right then. It's a shame, but okay. It's like, what was I thinking? So the problem is we come from a medical model that is matter-based. It's driven by the idea that we are solid, immutable bodies unconnected with each other and unconnected with the environment in which we're in, apart from the food we eat and the water we drink, but the energetic connection with each other and with our environment is completely ignored. And I guess you would know, but people watching this may not, is that when you're in synchrony with someone, when you're emotionally linked with them, your heart rate starts to actually synchronize with theirs. And also with animals as well. That happens with animals because there's an emotional bond there. So it is this unreal world, but it is real, but it feels unusual and different to what we're taught. And it's such a vast area of healing that's been untapped, I think, up to now. Although we are seeing a resurgence of, people working in the area of, I don't like to call it alternative, but or even complementary. I think of it as integrated because holistic, integrated. I work with people on many levels. So you and I do similar things in a way, although we probably, you focus more on pain, I think, than I do, which is interesting because you've obviously, you've come from that experience, so you know it really well. And I tend to focus on relational trauma because that's where I've had my history. So I think we're very much informed by what has happened to us, aren't we? So when you're working with people, can you detect what's going on for them? How do you kind of find out what their issues are? I mean, is it intuitive or is it you ask them everything?
Right, so it's a combination of both. I love asking them questions simply because I ask them questions that they don't think about and from a different direction that they would have come from, or and it can be like, it can be quite a surprise. So that's the first thing, and I think that's really key because when it comes from the person, when they're reflecting and they're thinking about it. For example, what was happening around the time that pain started, they wouldn't often have thought about that at all because, I know that I never thought about my symptoms in that way, that, my pain, my fatigue, my blurred vision, my insomnia, that it might be linked to something from a long time ago or anything at all that wasn't mechanical and physical. So asking questions, I think, for them to get a connection to it and start thinking about it, I think is really important. The other thing is, I often feel it a bit like a tuning fork, like you said, that empathy. Not often, I always feel it. So when I first started doing this work, I used to actually take on their pain. So I'd feel it exactly where and how they did. But I learned quite quickly that I didn't need to, that I couldn't take it and that it didn't help them. It was then two of us suffering. Okay, so I quickly changed my perspective on that and realized that I could be with them, feel their emotions. And I will feel if something's happening, a sensation in their stomach, or if their throat gets tight or rough. So it's really easy for me because it's just a way that I've always been able to tune in. And I think that actually happened more and more when I did my trauma work, my work, looking back at the pain points and where it came from and resolving them at the source. So because I am that empathetic, it's kind of easy. I can stop the conversation. I can say, oh, what's just coming up there for you? Or just tune into that area now. Because often they'll say, oh, it's in my heart, or I can feel something in my heart, and they won't go any further, where I'll feel more. And I'm often allowed, I can feel more than the person does, simply because they might not be ready for it. And I know it's safe and for them to feel, and that it's a good way to process.
I think what you've said there about, you've raised 2 points. I think the first is that those of us who get ill with these conditions tend to be sensitive, highly sensitive people, or empaths is another name for that. but we're totally disconnected from our bodies, and so we don't allow ourselves to heal, and that's what causes the illness, because it's a disconnect from these really powerful emotions of loss, anger, fear, betrayal, abandonment, whatever it is. Yeah, and we tend to think, oh, that's not important because we exist here and not in the body, and actually that's what derails us, I think, is the inability to connect with our own sensations, our own emotions, and allow them to process through us. I know in my case it was the death of my father when I was 19, and then the breakup of a significant relationship when I was 39, 40, about 20 years later. And wham, everything I hadn't processed 20 years before just
came and hit you.
But it took about 18 months to develop the symptoms. And you know, at first I was just on adrenaline, keep going, don't look down, as I say, don't look down into the body, don't connect with yourself, just focus on what you need to do, of course. So it's about the power of emotions to actually dictate our physiology, isn't it? And I know you know a lot of the science around what parts of the brain it affects. So take us through a bit of that if you can. Pain.
So I like to keep things really simple. For me, I see health and healing, that it's processes through the body. So there's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and these are all circuits in the body. So when we don't have an emotion that we're able to process, if it feels terrifying, if there's fear associated with it, if you're not feeling safe or able, or you don't know how, really what happens is that energy of the emotion is kind of stuck there with nowhere to go. It's like you've broken the circuit. So, and this is one of the circuits that the body needs for healing, because it's natural for a human being to experience all the emotions, from pain, grief, loss, shame, abandonment, to joy, love, bliss, you know, and pure love. So and we stop ourselves from feeling so much of that. And I know for me, I had a high pain threshold, which I thought was a great thing. I could injure myself and be bleeding and be absolutely okay. I was able to really numb out emotional, physical, mental pain. I just didn't ever go there because I didn't know how or what to do with it. And I thought it would floor me. For me, it was a bit like dying. Like if I went there, I wouldn't be able to cope. So, and that's a circuit in the body. So if that energy of that emotion doesn't flow, isn't able to reconnect and process through, the body doesn't know it's done. The body is still always processing that emotion at some level, and you'll find that people get triggered with that emotion. For example, if it's frustration or anger, that emotion will get triggered for people in lots of different ways with lots of different people, and that's why we never kind of can connect it back to where it came from. So there's a physiology of emotions. You know, there's chemicals that are released. We know when we're happy, life seems easy, we're energized, we get a lot more done. So just on the basic innate form of it, we kind of know that we feel very different when we're sad or low or angry, fight, you know. So with the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, it changes the balance in our body, and it doesn't allow the normal cycle to happen. So so that's the emotional circuit that gets blocked, that gets broken. And if that can't process, then healing is stopped to some level. Now, we all have a threshold. We can all hold so much, like a bucket that overflows. And some of us get really resourceful in building a really thick, big bucket. I know I think I had very thick walls, and it would take a lot to break it. which is why my symptoms were so severe, because I'd never processed anything throughout my life. The next circuit that gets broken is a mental circuit. So these are thought patterns. When we're coping with things in a way of being controlled, trying to stay strong, hiding our vulnerabilities, these all turn into coping mechanisms and coping patterns. And we use the same ones we used in childhood to keep strong. Some people rebel and are angry, so this comes out in aggression and addictions. Some people are more in the fearful state, so there's come out in hiding, feeling disempowered, weak, victim. So all these patterns, they just trigger automatically. So we don't consciously know we're doing it, but they become maladaptive as we're adults in the world, living our lives, working, raising families. They become maladaptive, and they affect not only us, but the people around us. So that's another circuit that is broken from where it should be in an adaptive state.
Yeah.
And then there's the spiritual, who we are, the truth about us, our values, our principles. And are we living that? So many of us don't. We don't think about it. We don't have the time to reflect because we're so busy in all these coping mechanisms. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's how we feel we're staying strong.
Yes, because the coping strategy has a purpose. It has a purpose to keep us going, doesn't it? To survive as opposed to thrive. I heard today on the radio somebody, I know it was to do with the royals and backing down from, it was Meghan Markle said something about, I've tried to adopt the British attitude of stiff upper lip, but human beings are designed to do more than survive. And gosh, it was just like, whoa, yes, we're here to thrive and grow and evolve actually into, hopefully better, more connected human beings with ourselves, with each other, with our world. And what you've said, I mean, it's so perfect. So it's so holistic actually is the vision you're using there. And it's the one I also approach people with. I don't just try and fix their thinking, because that's
doesn't work.
That isn't going to change if their values are compromised or their emotions are stuck. So a lot of the language you're using is the language that I use as well. So it's really interesting. I think we're on the same plane, if you like. We're just flying at different altitudes, maybe, or maybe we're
coming and going, shifting,
we're sort of coming and going. But definitely this information of the energy of emotion and kind of thoughts, because they're all energy. When you think a thought, it lights up certain pathways in your brain, and when you remember that thought, if it becomes habitual, I'm no good, I'm hopeless, I will never recover, that has a firing that will just keep going, and it actually makes it easier to think that thought. It's neural programming, if you like. So I love what you're saying, and I know, because obviously we work in a similar vein, and we work sometimes with the same clients, or we're involved with the same organization, the Chrysalis Effect. So I know I've heard such great things from clients who've worked with you, and you light them up, you enable them to see things that are hidden to them. And I just, the work that you do, I want to just reflect how important it is. How wonderful that your personal pain and your journey through that and how you struggled has become what you now do, and it's totally transformed the way you work. I mean, you're not an optometrist anymore,
No. And I often say that to people, it's changed me from the inside. I'm not even the same mother that I was to my older two children than I am to my younger one. I've completely changed, and I think that's what I hold for people, having gone through it. And I think you're exactly the same, that with the work you do and the wonderful way you do it, I think that we hold that because we know this is possible. We really hold that for someone who doesn't know that, who can't really keep that as a focus. And And I know absolutely without a shadow of a doubt for me that when you do this energetic work, it is real. We are like batteries, our cells are like batteries. We've got to make these connections. We've got to allow that energy, that circuit to connect, energy to flow. And then the thoughts, they change by themselves. I love doing things easily. So working against these patterns, these neural pathways, that's hard work, isn't it? You're going to get tired, you're going to fall back, you're going to slip into old patterns. Yet when you do it from the energetic work that we do, your thoughts change automatically. You have different thoughts coming to you, and it makes it so much easier to keep going in that vein. So, and I absolutely want to say the same for you, Patricia. The beautiful things the clients that you work with say about their work and the results you gain for them is really, really inspiring, and really, it really shows the importance of this work. I think for me, I could never go back to optometry. This feels so much more important. And as you say, people don't know the impact. I often get people who say, I don't think it'll work for me. I don't know if I can do it. It's not my thing. And yet they get amazing results when they open up, they trust, they have a really good rapport and relationship with you. And it's such a beautiful, elegant process. That's the thing I love about it. And it's great to see people looking much happier and recovering and reducing their symptoms and getting their lives back.
Yeah, it's so right. And trust and safety are such a big part of that as well, and having someone to hold, as you said, to hold the space for them, to hold the potential of who they are, rather than seeing them as they are currently presenting, stuck, angry, sick. You see them for what their true nature is, and you help them achieve that. And a lot of that is about holding that belief for them through the experience that we've both had. So, well, I could talk to you for hours, really could talk to you for hours on this subject. Obviously, it's very close to my heart, this idea of healing, and it's possible for everyone, not just for some people, Obviously, they have to be willing and open, as you said. So, how can they contact you if anybody wants to connect with you, Kuljit?
They can go to the website, which is centrebalance.co.uk, or
Brilliant.
they can email me directly at kuljitsehmi@centrebalance.co.uk.
Brilliant. Well, it's been a wonderful chat. That's all for today. I may do another one with you at some point. You never know. But for now, this is Patricia Worby signing off with my wonderful friend Kuljit Sehmi. And find me on alchemytherapies.co.uk or subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.